Okay, so this webinar obviously has come about because of our previous article in the iSing magazine, issue 5, is it? Yeah, issue 5, I think, which was an article on head versus falsetto. And essentially the article, you don't have to have read it to benefit from this this webinar, but obviously getting on there, Kalia says, hey, Scott seems to be sorted. Yeah, you don't have to have read the article to benefit from this webinar, but obviously the article is full of information that's going to help you going down the line, so I recommend you check it out at some point. But in the article we covered what head voice and falsetto are structurally, so how that translates to the settings within the vocal cords and the throat and everything else, what they kind of sound like, who might use them, and their application in genre, and then, which we might not have covered as much in the article, but we will today, is ways in which to train them and get them going on if head voice or falsetto is something that you're working on. So if you do have any questions at all about how to train your head voice, your falsetto, how it's feeling at the moment, any advice you feel like you would want to ask, then please do fire it over, and within the time we have, we will hopefully be able to get through everyone's questions. If not, we do apologise, but we'll do as much as we can. Yeah,
Questions are good.
questions are good, because then we just don't talk about what we think you want to hear, it's what you want to hear.
Yeah.
So, Steve, kick us off about head voice and falsetto, a summary of, what they are.
Well, actually, I don't know if we mentioned this in the article. The first thing I want to talk about is that, much like everything in the singing world, that it's hard to make a complete distinction between two things. So it's not like we've got an on-off switch for falsetto and head voice. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and I think that's worth noting. And it might sound obvious to most people, but I just think it's worth noting. It's from experience, people saying, "Oh, was that falsetto? Or was that head voice that just sung in there?" A, don't care, and but it might, how much does it matter if it sounds great and you felt good, right? But that's a different story. But essentially, also, without putting the camera down your throat at that moment in time, it's hard to know how much of the cricothyroid was engaged during that. Or
Sorry, cricothyroid, yeah.
was engaged at that point. How much it's just hard to know, and so I just don't think it's even though we've made a whole article about it, and it's not worth stressing about. So,
no, to be fair, I take your point. Like, if it's not damaging your voice, who cares? Anyway, if it's your choice and it fulfills the style and everyone likes it, it really doesn't matter what it is, unless you really are, an in-depth voice trainer and it benefits you in some way to know what it is, so you can build on it or change it for the need of the client. But yeah, for you guys, it's just trying to find a sound that's similar to it. And I think in the article we said as well, at some point you're in both. In one song you'll be in falsetto, maybe there's a bit of head, sometimes they mingle between each other. It's the same with mixing and belting, if you guys know that. I've even heard terms from Ingo Tietze himself saying mixed belt, implying that you can, with like turning up a volume knob on certain vocal qualities, you can just add more or less. It's like Steve said, not on off, just how much do you want? Into the next thing.
Just in case everybody missed that, one of the fundamental differences between the two vocal styles classifications are the engagement of the muscles, the deeper layers of the vocal cord when you sing certain pitches. So you can sing a C5 in so many different ways, and depending on how much of the chord is engaged at that moment in time will depend on the resultant sound and whether we call it falsetto or chest or head voice. Right. So just to clarify that going forward, and any other questions on that, then chime in. But That's the idea, and you could so many studies online. I mean, I was just looking then before we kicked off at how many, especially Dr. Ingo teachers got involved in. And you said about the ballot mixing. Yeah, there's been studies on how much engagement of the TAs involved at certain pitches, and it's crazy. But we're just going on very kind of basic. Does it sound a certain way? And in that case, can we put a name on it? That's what we're going for here. Have we got a question?
We've got a bunch of questions, right? Which is cool. We're going to start off with Scott. Scott Morwitz. Thanks for chipping in. So he has asked, I feel I've mostly solved these things for myself, but I've spent a lifetime trying to figure out whether I'm in head voice or reinforced falsetto. The latter is much easier to sing and loud, but I don't think it has the same quality as head voice, which sounds like Pavarotti is doing, but it's much harder to maintain. Now that is a cracking question, right? And it's actually, I think at some point when you get down the line with singing, you do get quite analytical. That can end up in analysis paralysis. We all know that, right? So it's kind of like how far do you take it? That is relevant and helpful. But this is kind of helpful because it does actually spot the differences between them and actually why we use them. And if you don't mind me kicking off with this one, the point that sticks out for me in this is reinforced falsetto is easier. And using a head voice itself has a different sound, but it's much harder to maintain. And you know what? That almost boils down to everything everyone finds a pain in the arse about singing in the mixed voice or in a strong sound. Because in a stronger sound, you need to have the balance between the vocal cords, and they're made of muscle, and they need to be activated. And in chest, they are very activated. They're full and they're thick, and all the muscle fibers are active. And then as you get towards the top of your range, in what sounds like a more powerful sound, like a mix, or when people are taking their chest up high and it's not straining, you're keeping some tension in the vocal cords, but you're letting enough of that tension dissipate for it to be stretched by another muscle that is attached to a cartilage that is rocking forward. And that's giving you, basically, still a strong body of vocal cord that's active, but a higher pitch. And that ends up in a stronger sound that is head voice. And what singers do when they have problems with range and problems in the voice, usually at the passaggio, which is another article we've done, which is where, at that point, coordination between the vocal cord and this one that rocks, we're talking TA and CT muscles for the geeks. At that point, then, the coordination between those two muscles needs to be really good for you to get through your voice and different areas. And many, 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 many people aren't quite coordinated. And one of the first things they let go of when they go up towards the top is the tension in the vocal cord or the TA muscle. That reduces the amount of vocal cord that is vibrating, and then you get basically what sounds like a falsetto for the rest of your range, or what is like a falsetto. So it makes perfect sense that your head voice is harder to maintain because you're then actually balancing two muscles against each other instead of letting one go and just relying on the CT muscle. If that helps you, it helps you answer that. Do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I find it really tricky as always because we can't hear it. And I just want to go back to your point there. That Scott is quite far down the line here in terms of vocal understanding, and so I just assume here, Scott. Sorry if I'm kind of speaking out of line, but sometimes what we do as well is we believe we're doing something that we're not. And then we end up, this is normal to me, this is my head voice, this is how head voice always feels. You could have developed loads since you put that label on head voice. That's a really bad way to say it. But I guess what I'm saying is that you said reinforced falsetto is easier to sing and it's loud. Well, maybe it isn't falsetto, and I guess that's the question you're asking there. And maybe it's about readdressing what you feel perceived being head voice and falsetto. And you're actually doing some great stuff underneath there, but we just need to help you figure out exactly what the names of each of them are, based on your experience. There's not having to go at you. We're not saying that you don't know what you're doing, but it's just, as a human being, we can get lost in our own world sometimes, especially when we know too much. So I would say, potentially, it'd be great to hear you, or for somebody else to hear you, and to see what you're doing there. Because I would say that if the latter is easier to sing and it's intense, falsetto normally isn't that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it'd be interesting to know if you are singing exactly the same pitches on those things, because I think a falsetto setting, if you like, sang higher, can have quite a lot of intensity just because of the nature of the sound wave. Has more energy at that point. And one can use resonators above to provide quite a lot of energy to sounds that would otherwise be quiet, and that applies to chest voice as well. People can have good chest voice on the vocal cord, setting, but if their resonators aren't also facilitating the boosting of a sound wave, again, you get less energy or more if it's actually done quite well. Certainly out there in the contemporary world, if that's where we get like head voice could be described as anything above like G or A flat, because your mouth becomes the main resonator at that point. That's why it's called head voice, because the sensations are felt in the head. And when you sing more intensely, you obviously feel more sensation than if you don't sing intensely. So Pavarotti, in his massive full voice on Nessun Dorma, he's on a B. Technically, that's head voice. His head resonator, or his mouth, is the most dominant. But in contemporary description of head voice, in the contemporary world, they perceive that sound to be much lighter than that, much more balanced or much softer than Pavarotti sound. And I think that's where we got into the article. It was horrible writing that article, right?
Yes.
Because terminology is just a hideous subject to approach. And that could again define what is your definition of head voice. Is it anything above your bridge, or is it actually a heady sound? And it'd be great to figure out, really. And you said you figured it all out for yourself, but I think for you to maybe piece the puzzle together well, you need a second opinion. And I hope that helps. Webinar, in terms of getting us a sound sample, obviously is not the most ideal. So you're going to need someone in person, right?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. But let us know if you have any more questions, Scott, or if that even helped. But do persevere with head voice. If it is a mix, if you are maintaining some interaction between both sets of vocal cord muscles and the antagonistic relationship, it is a much bigger skill to balance those out and use what you call your head voice. It is more difficult, but vowel shaping and laryngeal control can help you get control of that process and arrive in what's called a really strong mix, or a bell, or anything between the two. But that's probably going to take someone who knows what they're doing to help you with that.
Okay, great. Next question. Keir? I've been told that countertenors can end up with a weaker chest voice, as in non-pure head voice, because their falsetto is strong. Is there any truth in this? If so, how far down the line does the weakening of the non-head voice happen?
And we had a question a little bit like this on our podcast the other day, didn't we?
Yeah. Do you want to take that away?
Yeah, go for it, yeah.
Nothing, you want to take it away?
Okay, I can start. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
Keir, like countertenors are, you obviously know what they are. They're men that sing really high, essentially. They are mostly classical, obviously. They, I can't remember his name. Our iSing administrator will be able to remind me of the name of an Australian chap who is just insane. And when I can remember who he is, I can tell you who it is. But I think for any male singer that is singing really, really high, their vocal behaviors are going to influence the rest of their voice. And countertenors are extremely high singers. You can see this in regular tenors who are singing rock repertoire, that are singing routinely above their passaggio all of the time, and in their head voice a lot. Females definitely come into this category because when they sing, especially classical, they're only using their head voice, or their light voice, or even falsetto. When you overuse that coordination, the chest voice muscle, the vocal cord, has been so inactive in your singing for so long that when you then want to coordinate it in a sound, which would be chest voice or a mixed voice or a belt, that muscle would be really uncoordinated and untrained, which means that that person's going to have a struggle achieving their chest voice or anything that involves that setup. So you're right, a countertenor can absolutely experience problems with their chest voice spending too long in the top. And if so, how far down the line does the weakening of non-head voice happen? God, it could happen. In the experience of singers I've worked with, it takes a while, but it's almost inevitable.
Yeah. Yeah. I would just add to that in terms of the classifications. Once again, not so common with tenor, countertenor, but actually the example of men believing their basses. And I'm not saying that if this is Yuki who has a classification of countertenor, is that that can be.
So I've got to plug my laptop in while Steve carries on talking. Do I need to get help?
No, it's fine. That can often be the damaging part, and we're given this classification, especially early on in our career, where I'm a countertenor, so I'm going to keep on singing there. Where the fact is just that it might have been that Chris has, like Chris said, that we haven't developed that part of our voice. We haven't engaged the muscles in the lower part of the voice, which has given us an incorrect classification. So now I'm a countertenor. Now I sing high. I'm just going to keep on doing it because that's what I do. And then at your point here about how far down the line do we essentially lose the bottom, I guess is what you're asking there. Well, it happens as soon as you start to work in the top. And so I would say that to readdress classifications is quite an important point. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially, and girls can get this a lot, to be fair. And in choral singing as well. With your classification, you're going to get forced into a way of singing quite regularly, and that can leave choral singers in a way compromised situation where they're having to sing a single line up in the top of their voice inappropriately for so long. And weirdly, when you work with classical singers or singers that have been singing high for so long, they might be straining and showing attributes that don't necessarily say that they have a problem with chest voice. Sometimes the way they're straining makes it sound like they have too much chest voice. But you get a classical soprano who suddenly goes like, I have a massive gap on like A5. I don't even know what to do. Like I have to sing stuff. And it's always a shock when that person realizes that if you take them on a scale that's 2 octaves, that starts deep in their chest and goes right into the gap, that suddenly the gap is filled in. Because head voice or falsetto or whatever it is, I think long term, your entire voice stabilizes itself. And without chest voice, you can run into problems, even if you're just a head voice singer. So yeah, those countertenors, maybe some of them have great skill and control, but some of them might come unstuck because of instabilities down at the bottom where they don't pay it much attention. And concentrating back on your chest voice can actually have a cracking effect on your head voice and your falsetto and overall stability.
Which should probably be answered for Keir there, is to, if that is you we're talking about, Keir, you might be asking somebody else. But if that is you, weakening of the.
I have a friend.
Yeah, who has a problem. The weakening of the head voice, essentially. Use some exercises that are going to work the chest voice for a little bit, and then see what it does for your head voice.
It would be great if any of you have. Scott's in New York, by the way. I'm very impressed with that. Are you? I think we should. Maybe some of you guys might have some ideas on how you train your head voice and how you train your falsetto. But maybe we can offer you some help as to how you can train both. We'd love to hear what the world gets up to. But Steve, what do you get up to with either male or female singers that that want to train head voice?
And a second, what was the question? I was reading that.
What's your go-to exercises for males or females who are looking to get to grips with head voice?
Yeah, okay. So I would, especially to begin with, it's finding the top, finding those, exposing the notes, and that could be a basic thing for us on this webinar. There might be some people watching it that can't find the top notes, so then we would look at some release exercises. Again, what does that mean? It just means, can I sing the pitch any way that I can? And that is the kind of perhaps hooty sounds, starting at the top,
like this kind of tone,
if it needs to be taken that far. Especially guys that haven't experienced above a A4 ever in their life. Whatever it takes. If that's you, a low guy that's sung for 30 years in a soul band, then you may need to experience something like that. Moving on from there very quickly, bringing in a bit more. The E vowel is a great one for a bit more clarity in the sound, obviously adduction. So changing that woof to a wee will give you a bit more on that. Wee wee, starting on the top. And you're already starting to piece together this thing that maybe sounds and feels a little more like a head voice because it's got more clarity. And then, just to skip forward a few months, we would start to look at the some people call them the pharyngeal sounds, the and if we're going to take a transition from the woof to the wee, take the W away and put an N on the front and say knee. And it's a sound that guys don't want to feel a lot. It's a sound that a lot of girls would have felt, especially American girls. No offense.
Pause.
Oh my God.
That's really terrible.
Is it?
Yeah. Just carry on.
But so they're the sounds that we want to start introducing. And if you're again a guy, it's common sense really. You spend a lot of your time like me. I mean, I am very dull when I speak. And more so 5 years ago. And so that wasn't a part of my voice, and it needs to be for a singer. So, yeah, woof, exposed notes, wee, nee, that'd be head voice.
Yeah, and that, that's the vowel is so important, as Steve's pointing out. Looking between the sounds, the consonant can help you find your way between head and falsetto, because head involves more of the vocal cord, and falsetto involves less of the vocal cord, just the kind of narrow edges. So, some people find that plosive consonants that are voiced, these are ones like ga, 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 or ba, 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 or da, da, da. Combining one of those with an appropriate vowel, say, like Steve said, like we, like gee, 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 gee. Some people feel like they can get a heady sound with more engagement of the vocal cord, more volume and power. Because of the nature of how that consonant works, but then when you soften that consonant and you go aspirate, fricative, unvoiced, like something like F or S, you take a vowel like oo, which is super dark and tends to take energy out of the voice, which is, could be said as being a falsetto-like state. You combine it with something really airy, which has much more likelihood of disengaging vocal cord, then you get foo, 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 and you might end up more in a falsetto. than more of a head, you know? So those two things can help you then stylistically start to feel more of what you're trying to feel, so you can reproduce it on lyrics.
And what's a good point to throw there, I think, is that, again, it's very individualistic. So everyone's going to have their own, they're going to be in a different place with this stuff. But what I found in the past is that generally girls don't have to worry about finding the top notes, generally. Guys more so. But once both are at that level of, okay, I've got these notes in the upper register, developing that into more of a head voice, clear sound, using ni and gi, generally what can be the slip up is squeeze and unwanted tension. So like that, because this situation of the tongue coming forward, all that kind of stuff, locks the jaw up. There's the extrinsic muscles getting involved. Gi, the same one. You know, there's a lot of movement there, and so either way, just keep an eye on, have I still got the ease that I had before when I was doing the freedom release stuff? And if I haven't, then this is kind of counterproductive in a sense.
And put it on your list to work with someone in person. You know, that's so important with this thing, you know, just to make sure you don't miss the mark. But Scott actually added a little bit more to what he said. Back to the issue, to be a bit more specific on a vocalese or exercise. I'm great with balancing things out, but on, say, a sustained high A, presumably a 4, just above the bridge there, which a bit more musical theatre belty than classically raised soft palate. If I start it out in my stronger voice, which I'm calling head voice, I have a difficult time sustaining it for a long time. It feels strange. I can sing it in the reinforced falsetto, and it is strong and loud, but it's somewhat noticeable to other singers what I'm doing. The high B and C can be done this easy high voice, but it's not as big of a deal. But on a note that approaches my break, G, G sharp A, it's pretty tough. I guess I need to figure out an in the crack balance.
I love it.
In the crack, I just have no. You do realise what that sounds like, right? Balance between the muscles that is dependable.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about being in the crack a little bit, and mixing or passaggio is the real issue with this one, as you are trying to get a head voice, but the balance between those two muscles is something that probably needs to be figured out, and can be embellished by exercises that work on passaggio or mix, and this can be everything from, you know, changing the larynx height itself, using something slightly like this or slightly like this to assist you in transition and balance within that area, because you may not be set up well when you come back into that bridge to boost the sound signal and operate the vocal cords in the right way. And I would say probably that the larynx itself is probably going to be a little bit high as you drop into that bridge, which makes your voice basically, in simple terms, come back to the chest setting too soon and grab and squeeze and strain you.
Yeah, and I think Scott's kind of pointed that in the last sentence there, exactly that. I think you're right there, Scott. Based on what you said in the previous, we spoke about before, the balance between those muscles as well. Yeah, the larynx setting as well as the, well, how many things are there to work on that part of your voice? But yeah, exactly that, Scott. I think you've nailed it. It is, you're doing some good stuff up there. You're in a good place by the sound of things. The fact that you can attain those notes in the way that you're doing it, in this reinforced falsetto, as you call it. And for me, as a teacher, that's one of the things that I would look to do with singers, especially if they haven't had any experience in the upper register, is to try whatever it takes, just get something strong and clear up there, and then your body's more in a better place to start to. I know it sounds very vague, but in a better place to start to explore and piece together the two voices, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Somebody back in the day said the voice is made up of two things. One is and one is ah. and it's our job to kind of move those things together, which I thought was a nice little simple way to put it. But exactly that. So you, at the moment, it's got sounds like in that middle part where they come together, where they blend. Yeah, those two things is about the balance, which comes down to larynx, vocal cord, engagement, resonance, and just working through. You're in the top spot now.
Yeah.
In the driving seat.
Pavarotti used to describe it as like a figure of 8, which kind of is another, again, simple visual, but typically when it comes to transition and getting in the bridge, things like the vowel shape close a little bit as you come into the bridge. So as you know, if your chest voice is down here, you know, vowels can be open, but as you come into the bridge, typically we need to make vowels a bit more closed to be able to deal with that, and back off air pressure, you know, all those kind of things, because it's quite hard to fit through this bridge. And when you get out the other side, again, the vowel is actually quite open to being opened again. And that's, you know, if you're going to explore anything, you know, looking at the vowel shaping that you're doing, especially on the lips and the tongue where they're sat, some research into that can really help you to find out more about that bridge.
Yeah, so what would you say there, Scott, that you, that although you're in a great place, this is like the hardest place, in my opinion, because you've got to engage. They say you could spend all day in a kind of reinforced falsetto / kind of light head voice thing, whatever you want to call it. You do that all day, but yeah, as you say, when you engage on those notes, you know it's one way or the other, and gaining that Pavarotti precision takes time.
Yeah.
But let's face it, once you've sorted that out on this A4 and the B flat and the B, then you're going to be laughing
all the way to the bank. Scott did also ask, perhaps at the end you could address the best ways to further oneself as a teacher, and connect to resources, groups, conferences, etc., to really become a part of the world of vocal coaching, teaching world. I'd love to make that a career. Now, that's something we know about.
Yeah, and I say what, Scott, it sounds like you're in a good place to do that as well, with your understanding here. But
favourite things to do as a teacher, to get involved in the network?
Well, if you ask me about courses,
events,
so
whatever.
So courses, I'm just going to try and pick one out of the air. Is there one called
B? We give it a B.
Something like become a singing teacher or something. Like,
yeah. Be a singing teacher. Beer. Oh, that's later, isn't it? That's Friday. Beer.
So we just go with Bass.
Yeah, it's called Bass, Become a Singing Teacher, or Be a Singing Teacher. iSing, again, can post a link to that in the chat box just now. But that's a teacher training course, right, which is normally 10 weeks with a meeting every week. vocalizeyouevents.com is absolutely one of the best resources for finding out really big events that go on in LA and actually around America, where you get to learn from people like Ingo Tietze. We attend it twice a year and get ridiculous amounts of information from it.
Yeah.
Amazing teaching resources.
That's a great point, because we talk about Vocalize You and we talk about fasttraining.com, and there's a reason for that, and it's not we've got no agenda with that, because we don't benefit really from that at all.
No.
Apart from the fact, and even take it all the way back to Vocalogy and Practice that we're part of in Vocalize You, the best part about that for me and you, I'm sure, is that it's about the benefit of the student, the benefit of the singer, and that's it. Bottom line, no one knows right or wrong, as we know, and if anybody tells you that in the singing world, that they've got the right answers and they can run away immediately, no one knows the answers completely, and everyone's trying to figure it out. But the culture that you want to experience is workshops, people, courses that go, here's some stuff that has worked, have a go with it, learn some things, and then go and do it. Go and spend 3 months doing lessons for free, and go and get the experience.
The amount of voices that you encounter largely determines your ability to deal with them in the future. Like, the voice, every vocal journey for everyone is unique, which means it's really hard to train for it. Because it's like you have to then see many, many, many scenarios that often are never linked. And they just come up in different orders with different people, and everyone expresses their vocal woes differently and progresses differently. So the amount of voices you end up studying, working with, struggling with, and observing other people deal with them as well. We even got other teachers to teach our students just to see, like, what would you do? Because I'm lost, There's a massive, massive benefit in that. And I know in New York City there's Rachel Lawrence, there's Claudia Friedlander, there's Wendy Parr, great teachers that you should hook up with.
Yeah.
We have a podcast as well, The Naked Vocalist. We have guests on there, and we share anything we can share on there. So there's definitely going to be a different vibe, and you can see us at thenakedvocalist.com. There's also iSing magazine that publish articles on that as well.
Yeah, so all of that stuff. And a great way to end there, Scott, I think. It's so amazing how one person does something so easily and another student has a major problem with the same thing. Welcome to our world.
It is fun, though. Our world is really fun. Just sat here looking at a laptop. Just joking. It was great. So we're gonna have a beer because it's Friday and the sun is out.
Thank you for joining us, everyone.
Don't forget to get back to iSing is such a great resource for you guys. The third name was Wendy Parr, by the way, Parr. She's great for arts development as well. Rachel Lawrence is musical theatre. Scott's listening to our podcast. So yeah, thanks again. thenakedvocalist.com. Get in touch with us. We'd love to hear from you. And the next month's article in iSing is on the science of singing in formants and harmonics. So strap up for that one. Blimey. No! Put your seatbelts on. Thank you.
Long ride.
Long ride, that one. Yeah, stick with us. So thank you and happy Friday.